It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. And we begin with politics. As the Federal Capital Territory Minister Nyesom Wike on Monday in Abuja hosted critical stakeholders of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, under the aegis of concerned stakeholders of the PDP, with a resolution demanding the party to zone its 2027 presidential ticket to the south. The meeting, which lasted several hours, also resolved not to let the party die and demanded that the acting national chairman of the PDP, Ambassador Umar Iliya Damagum, and National Secretary, Senator Sam Anyanwu, issue a notice for a meeting of its National Executive Committee, NEC. In a communique read by Wike after the meeting, the stakeholders emphasized the need to reinforce internal democracy, equity and justice within the ranks of the party. While it was not immediately clear whether the Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde, a member of the G5, was invited to the meeting, his other colleagues, Ifeanyi Ugwanyi, Enugu, Samuel Otom, Benue, and Okezi Ikpeazu, Abia, were at the meeting. Now to other news, the Senate disclosed yesterday that it was proposing a bill that would designate the National Assembly as the venue for the swearing in of the elected president in Nigeria. The leader of the Senate, Senator Opeyemi Bamidele, gave the hint yesterday while addressing some journalists at his Asokoro, Abuja residence. He spoke ahead of President Bola Tinubu's address to the joint session of both the Senate and the House of Representatives at the National Assembly on Thursday, June 12. The Red Chamber also said the proposed bill would make it mandatory for the president to always address Nigerians on June 12 of every year, being the Democracy Day. President Tinubu had earlier in 2024 attended a joint session of the National Assembly on June 12 for the official rendition of the current national anthem without addressing the lawmakers. But on Thursday this week, the president will be with the federal lawmakers, totaling 460, for another special joint session where he will give an official address. Now to economic news, as the World Bank has declared that trade tensions, which have been triggered by the United States President Donald Trump, and policy uncertainty were expected to drive global growth down in 2025 to its slowest pace since 2008, outside of outright global recessions. According to the World Bank's latest Global Economic Prospects report, the turmoil has resulted in growth forecasts being downgraded in nearly 70% of all economies across all regions and income groups. In the report, the bank lopped 0.4 percentage points off its forecast for global growth this year. It now expects the world economy to expand by just 2.3% in 2025, down from 2.8% in 2024. The expected slowdown to 2.3% is nearly half a percentage point lower than the rate that had been expected at the start of the year. However, the bank retained its April 2025 growth projection for the Nigerian economy at 3.6% in 2025, 3.7% in 2026, and 3.8% in 2027. Now, unfortunately, on a sad note, Jesutega Onokpasa, a well-known lawyer, political commentator, and prominent figure within Nigeria's ruling All Progressives Congress, APC, is dead. Onokpasa was widely recognized for his fiery political commentary and active role within the APC. He served as a member of the party's publicity committee and played a significant part in the APC Presidential Campaign Council during the 2023 general elections. In his last interview on Arise News, he stated clearly that he felt President Tinubu had failed woefully in ruling Nigeria, and he felt that the president may end up as a one-term president.
Let's feed our citizens. Let's govern well. It's not a question of people defecting to our party. It's a question of us ruling well. And in that angle, we have failed woefully. President Bola Tinubu has failed woefully to rule well, to provide food for Nigerians, to give them succor in this hard times. I think President Tinubu should concentrate more on bringing down prices of goods and services, strengthening democratic values and all this idea of people coming to our party. That's not what is going to make us win the election in 2027. I can tell you for free, Ruben, that at this rate we are going, All these things will help us in 2027. If we are not careful, Bola Tinubu will end up as a one-term president. Quote me anywhere.
Well, that was his last outing here on Arise News. We send our heartfelt condolences to his family, his friends, his loved ones, his colleagues, and of course, to the nation at large who followed his commentary. May his soul rest in peace. And Dr. Abati, you are the one who conducted that last interview that he had on Arise.
Yeah. It's most unfortunate that Jesutega died. You know, he was a man who was very bold, very courageous, and who, if he had a change of mind, was not afraid to also say he had changed his position. That interview was conducted on April 27, 2025, on another program, This Day Live, the Sunday talk show. And in fact, when I saw him, I had phoned him in the morning, and he, you know, enthusiastically agreed to come onto the show. But when I saw him, I was wondering what could have happened. But eventually he told me he had gone surgery, heart surgery, you know, and that was why he was looking different. And he said he was recovering, but as it turned out, as they say, God knows best. Our condolences to his family. He was a very staunch supporter of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He was part of the publicity committee ahead of the 2023 general elections. But after the elections, as the appointments were being made and all that, he felt uncomfortable with the fact that President Tinubu had overlooked many of the people who worked for him and was rewarding people who were even attacking and abusing him during the process. And he didn't like that at all. And he came, you know, on the program and expressed, you know, his discontent with the manner of appointments. And he got to a point where he was saying, look, because President Tinubu was appointing people who did not work for him, and also majorly the Lagos crowd, that he was going to work against President Tinubu in the 2027 general elections. But man proposes, God disposes. But, you know, he was a lawyer. His original background was in drama, and he was a very articulate, you know, committed Nigerian who spoke his mind, you know, and did not care whose ox was God in doing so. Well, death is the debt that all human beings owe, and it will come when it will. So what was that thing that, you know, was said? Do not, tell for whom the bell tolls for thee. In the death of others, we are also reminded of our own mortality, which in itself is a fact of life. Now, very quickly to the other subject, which is about the World Bank. The World Bank has just released its Global Economic Prospects Report for 2025. And the major message in that projection is that, look, there has been a downward review of the growth outlook for the year 2025. Originally, it was 2.8% for 2024. Now, for 2025, the estimate was 2.7 globally, that is. And now it's been revised downwards to 2.3. Over 70 countries of the world, mostly developing countries, have had their projections reviewed downwards. Even the United States has had, in its own case, you know, a review from 1.9% for the year 2025 to 1.6% for the year 2025. Now, what is the World Bank saying basically? The World Bank is saying that international trade tensions will seem to have created uncertainties, and those uncertainties are having effect, you know, on trade, on growth. And most of these countries that are affected are outside of Asia. And that outside of Asia, most developing countries in the year 2025 are not going to express any significant growth. However, for Africa, for Nigeria specifically, let me start with Nigeria. the projection for the year 2025 remains at 3.6%, which was still the same projection in April. 3.7% for 2026, 3.8% for 2028. Those who are saying that Nigeria needs to grow at a double-digit rate, will probably still be disappointed that, we're not growing at a double-digit rate. But that is, the forecast that the World Bank has come up with. For the rest of Africa, where it looks like for sub-Saharan Africa, it's 3.7% in 2025, as high as 4.2% in 2026. But, outside of Asia, as I've said, most developing countries are going down. They've been reviewed downwards. And I've stated the reason. However, we're told that this is the lowest economic growth outlook in a decade since the 1960s. Now, the effect of all of this is that there will be effects in terms of job creation, in terms of per capita difference between developed countries and developing countries, and the capacity of countries to also reduce extreme poverty. However, the big takeaway from that report by the World Bank will seem to be in terms of its recommendations. And what are some of those recommendations? One, that developing countries that are most affected, 70% of them, should enter into regional agreements. In other words, collaboration. 2, they should invest more in skills. 3, they should pay more attention to the productivity within their areas, within their jurisdiction. 4, they should also pay attention to global cooperation. That global cooperation under a multilateral system will make it easier for countries who are weak, countries that are weak, to do much better. More importantly, they need to focus on fiscal spending for the benefit of vulnerable households and to strengthen fiscal framework in those countries. Now, that's by way of giving a summary of what the World Bank is saying in its Global Economic Prospects Report, latest report for 2025. Now, quickly, to go to what Senator Opeyemi Bamidele was saying. Senator Opeyemi Bamidele is saying the National Assembly will now be made a place where the president is sworn in. Well, that's after the fashion of the United States. For over 200 years, the American president has been sworn in on the grounds of the Capitol, on the West Front of Congress, facing the National Mall. That has been the tradition in the United States for over 200 years, except in situations where there was extreme weather or in situations where there had been an assassination and then the swearing in had to be done inside the Air Force One, inside an aircraft. However, in Nigeria, we have been using the Eagle Square since the return to civilian democracy in 1999. So when Senator Opeyemi Bamidele says they are considering the president, having a swearing in the presence of the representatives of the people, I think it's just a way to follow the example of the United States. And nobody can argue with that because the Constitution, anyway, does not state specifically that this is where the president of the Nigerian Federal Republic should be sworn in. The use of the Eagle Square is just by convention. It's just for reasons of convenience. Now, the other thing that Senator Opeyemi Bamidele was talking about is that the president will be required to address the nation in the presence of Parliament, that's the National Assembly, every June 12. Now, June 12, you'll recall, was made Democracy Day by President Buhari. Now, again, this is after the fashion, after the tradition in the United States. But in the United States, the State of the Union address is a matter of law. The American president in Article 2, Section 3, Clause 1 of the American Constitution, Article 2, Section 3, Clause 1, is required periodically, that Constitution says, to give a State of the Union address to Congress on a regular basis and to present before Congress those issues that it would like, the lawmakers of the United States to consider for, his own action. But in Nigeria, there is no such thing. The last time President Tinubu was in the Parliament, National Assembly, it was to present the new national anthem. They sang the national anthem and the president went away. It was awkward. This Thursday, June 12, he's also going to attend the National Assembly joint sitting of the upper house and the lower house. And then he will sing national anthem and also go away. So the optics don't look good. So I think the proposal to follow the American example, would be a good idea if they can pass legislation to say that the president of Nigeria has an obligation, and they adopt the word in the American Constitution periodically to give Nigerians an account of what he has done on specific issues. I think that also, in my view, will be in order.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with the introduction of the State of the Nation address, especially because in the past we have experienced long stretches where we have not heard directly from the president. We haven't had clarity about the president's stance on one or two issues. This is in past administrations. So it's important for us to be able to see the president, to be able to hear from him directly. And if it's constitutionalized that at least at the bare minimum, I think it's something that should happen more than once a year, but at least at the bare minimum, if we can have an annual State of the Nation address, then it would move us forward by way of transparency, accountability, and also just that interaction, bringing a human face to the presidency and the interaction with the people. However, looking at the swearing in of the president in the National Assembly, we go back into history, and you recall that this culture was started in parliamentary systems. So this actually emanated from countries like France in the late 1800s, Germany in the 1900s, I believe Italy as well in the 1900s. And this was because the president was elected by the lawmakers. And so it was only right that the president be sworn in parliament before the lawmakers. But now you'll find that in majority of presidential systems, the president is sworn in a neutral venue. Now, this is to try and emphasize the fact that there is a separation of powers. This is also to create transparency and to also give the people, because remember, in the presidential system, the people are voting for the president directly. It is supposed to be an opportunity for people to come out to a big public venue and be spectators and be part of the process. Now, in a system such as ours, moving this ceremony away from the people, for me, is a challenge, because as much as the symbolism of trying to portray the president as one, because when you bring him into the parliament, you're saying that this is somebody who is a guardian of the Constitution, and this is somebody who is a non-partisan executive. You're trying to bring him closer to the Constitution. But our issue at the moment is that I think people want more accessibility to the president, number one, an opportunity to see him, wave at him, hear him, especially as he's being sworn in that moment. That's number one. Number two, somewhat of a neutral venue. In the past, we've had several debates about how neutral the National Assembly really is. And I think it might be important for us to maintain Eagle Square, to maintain that neutrality, and then to maintain the separation of powers. We're having a continued debate again about a fusion of powers between the three arms of our government. And I think that the optics may not be in favor of what the state of the nation currently in Nigeria as we work to enrich our democratic institutions. I think it might still be in good order to keep things separate for now, although some may say that it might be cheaper as well to do it inside the National Assembly. But I think that us working beyond symbolism and actually working to deepen the institutional strength of the various arms of government is more important. And as such, I would say that Eagle Square remains the prime location for such an event as swearing in. Now we'll quickly go to issues pertaining to the PDP. Several issues were discussed, and the communique focused on what I think are two major issues. The insistence that the presidency should be rotated to the south. That's number one. Number two, the other issues were pertaining around national secretary and more or less the reinforcement from this arm of the PDP of Senator Samuel Anyanwu as the PDP national secretary. Now, it looks like this issue of national secretary might be the issue that's going to break the camel's back where the PDP is concerned, because I think that it would be easy to reach a general consensus. Constitutionally, for the party, this presidency belongs to the South. So reaching a consensus around that, I don't think should be a deal breaker. But the issue around the national secretary and the cracks it has exposed within the party is ultimately looking like it's going to be the issue that stops the PDP from being able to move forward and being able to create some sort of healing and reconciliation within the party. We've already seen various responses and reactions to that outing, with many members of PDP saying, well, this group, what is the locus they had to even meet and have this convention that they had? Whereas the group that met under Nyesom Wike are saying that they're speaking against divisive and selfish tendencies in the party. But I think all parties are currently guilty of trying to work towards their own personal interests as opposed to the general interests of the party. Those opposing this meeting that was held by Nyesom Wike are also saying that, oh, this meeting was a pro-Tinubu, it was a Tinubu support group meeting. So it looks like the issues within the PDP are far from being ironed out, peace is far from being reached, and the long-standing issues which caused that big rift in 2023 persist, and it doesn't look like there's an end in sight. We continue to watch and wait as we see whether further developments will emerge that can lead to some sort of a unified position. But as it stands now, it looks like the fragments, the factions continue to pull in opposing directions. Now, very quickly to the World Bank. Now, one of the interesting takeaways from me on the issue, on the revision of growth projections by the World Bank is the fact that China is set to maintain its growth projections, its pre-tariff growth projections, which goes to show you the resilience of that economy, and also goes to show you that this trade war, as much as it has been hugely publicized and as much as we have sort of waited with bated breath to see the impact that it would have on the Chinese economy, it's now looking clear that the Chinese economy is, may I call it, tariff-proof to an extent. However, when you look at some of the numbers here on the African continent, you find that this theme of being somewhat tariff-proof is consistent. Now, it looks like our inability to integrate deeply with global trade has saved us and rescued us this time around. We've preached ad nauseum about the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement and how this is a great opportunity for us to be able to build deeper and more extensive trade ties amongst ourselves. We've seen developments here in Nigeria, such as the passing of the Pan-African Payment System, which is supposed to make it easier for businesses to transact with themselves on the African continent. We've also heard advocacy for the reduction in tax, or for the total elimination of air taxes, because we know that the other hindrance to African trade is the enormous challenge it is to travel around the African continent. So while all these World Bank projections continue, it's unfortunate that we are seeing somewhat of a lethargic energy from our own African leaders in trying to take advantage of this great opportunity to deepen trade ties with ourselves on the African continent. But all we can do really is continue to advocate for it, highlight it, and hope that soon we can see more fruits, more fruits bearing from this. Also important to note that we're also seeing a strengthening of trade ties between China and the African continent. Just recently, I saw some reports around some of the first avocados and tangerines from various parts of the African continent that have arrived into the Chinese market. So China is really tapping into this opportunity. But Africa, even if we're not ready, how quickly can we get ready? The lethargy is unfair, it's unnecessary, because this is a golden opportunity to reinvest, to reorder our economies, and to be able to develop at somewhat of a faster pace than we have in the past.